Hello and welcome to the We All Follow podcast. My name is Matt Fox. I am your host. Today I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Ben. How's it going, Ben?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Welcome back. We have Nigel. How's it going, Nigel?
Good.
And Dabo, who is trying really hard not to fall back to sleep. How's it going, buddy?
Yeah, I've just about managed to wake up for this after that game, but yeah, here we are. Hello.
And today, follow us on X at We All Follow Pod, of course. And today we will be doing a Champions League special, the league phase, match week 1. And for those of you that are still confused, there are 32 teams in the league phase. Each team will play 8 matches, and the top 8 will go straight through to the round of 16. The middle 16 will play round of 32, and the lowest 8 teams will go home. So, boys, after the first week of match week 1 for the Champions League phase, what is your Champions League moment of the week? Let's start with you, Dabo.
Oh, I'm trying to think now. I'm trying to get the brain juices going. Moment of the week. I can't remember who scored it in the Sporting game. The second goal was unbelievable. What a strike! That was like just a proper bit of ball striking, lasered into the top corner. I can't remember for the life of me who scored it because I didn't actually watch the game. I just watched the highlights.
Sebas.
With the best,
Yeah. But what a finish that was. So I think in terms of just kind of a UCL moment, that's it for me.
Who's up next? Ben, what do you got? I know you watched all these games.
Trying to think. You know what? I might say Yamal scoring today because it makes him the second youngest scorer in the Champions League just ever. And yeah, it's just on the first youngest I saw was Ansu Fati. So it's like La Masia. Obviously, we know what's happened with Fati, but hopefully it's not going to be the case with Yamal. But that guy's just ridiculous. They showed a stat before the game that the amount of assists for club and country, he's number 1, tied with De Bruyne. I don't know if that. Oh no, obviously didn't change because he scored. But yeah, it's just mental for someone who's 17 and was 16 during that year to be doing that.
Absolutely. I was going to go the Yildiz, who's, I know your pet project, Ben. He had a screamer. But I'm going to go for true Champions League heritage, which is a Harry Kane hat trick of dodgy penalties. So that's my Champions League moment of the week. Nigel,
Quick question though on Harry Kane. So he scored 4 goals in that game. Who was the last Englishman to score 4 goals in the Champions League?
It was Alan Smith.
In 1991 against
The only reason
Vienna.
why I know that is because Alan Smith was trolling Harry Kane on Twitter saying I didn't need any penalties to score my 4.
Yeah.
What was your Champions League moment of the week, Nigel?
Well, I was going to go with Kevin De Bruyne walking off at half time and crying in the locker room, but I'm not a childish like that. So I'm going to go with something what's literally happened 35 minutes ago, and I'm going to go with David Raya doing another wonder save. He had the 2 saves against Wolves in the first game of the season. That the one from the header was ridiculous. He was unbelievable against Wolves. He then follows it up at Villa with 2 absolute stormers, and the one from Watkins was a joke. Especially so he got up off the floor, didn't he, at Villa for a double save. Yeah. He then has, he made some good saves, didn't he, against their against Spurs. The one where he tipped it just round the corner when Van de Ven were coming in from a free kick. But then that double save and that penalty and that header tonight was stupid. But I loved on the commentary how Rio Ferdinand. I mean, he doesn't talk much sense when he's on TV. He doesn't talk much sense at all, Rio Ferdinand. But what he did say, which did make sense, is he's talking about how Raya was calm enough to stand up, not dive early. He waited. He trusted what Inaki Kanya had said to him about which way Rettega likes to go. And so he stood and waited. And in the end, it forced Rettega to go the way what he wanted. So, yeah. That's for me. Raya's double save.
Yeah, it was a spectacular piece of goalkeeping. The rest of the game was very far from spectacular. Kind of the battle of two mid blocks. Before we started, I was telling Dabo that it really seemed like Atalanta was showing us a lot of deference by the way they set up. Ben, based on how they play in the league, were you surprised with the way that they set up in this one?
Not entirely. I think they are a very physical team. They press really well, man to man, very organised, and the manager's top manager. So the main thing, I thought it was going to be a frustrating game and that it would be physical, quite a battle. But the thing, I guess, that not surprised me, but I didn't massively expect was that there was it didn't look like we ever got out the first gear. It looked like we were trying to preserve energy almost. There's a few moments where there wasn't enough taking on the man and really trying to change the game like that. A couple of the subs, I thought Calafiori and Sterling, when they came on, did a bit more of that. But obviously it was quite a small. They didn't have a lot of time to really make a difference, and the rest of the team just, I don't know. There's a few performances like Party especially, just frustrates me, man. But yeah, I won't waffle about it. But yeah.
Yeah. Dabo, was that the match that you were expecting in terms of the Arsenal one?
Yeah, I do agree with what Ben was saying, to be fair. And as well, I think another prominent thing as well, you can see that one eye was almost on Sunday after 70 minutes because Saka was taken off. And no matter what the game state is, it is very, very rare for Saka to be taken off, especially never kind of at a 0-0 situation or when we're drawing up behind. So it's quite an obvious indicator that Sunday was on the mind. And we went there to shut Atalanta out, and we did that very well. When you consider last season, only a few months ago, really, in reality, they beat Leverkusen 3-0 in the final. They beat Liverpool over 2 legs. So they've got good European pedigree recently. They've got players that can hurt you. And we basically nullified them to nothing apart from the penalty. So all in all, it's a decent result. I think in this format, you've got to win your home games, and then you've just got to try and kind of grind out results away. And I think that would get you into the top 8. So I think for us, it's now eyes on City, and then for Arsenal, we've just got to kind of make sure that we win our home games with PSG the next one. So that's a big game for us, I think.
Yeah, Nigel, your take on today's match before we go into the ones from the last couple of days? You're on mute, brother. Still.
Performances and results. There isn't a correlation between performance and result. You need to understand that. It's not something there's no defined relationship. Why people, I'm just on a group of people saying, oh, performance is awful. There's no, as a golfer, people have said there's no pictures on the scorecard. Don't matter how you got your score, it's the number what counts. And at the end of the day, that goes down as a 0-0. It could have been a 1-0 to us, but it goes down as a 0-0. No damage done. And yeah, but we didn't create it. It doesn't matter. If you don't concede, you can't lose. If you don't concede, you cannot lose. So it's never going to be bad. There we go.
Yeah, I always thought that this was going to be a tough match. I think it was so funny in the lead up to the game. I'm going to try not to swear on this podcast as a general rule. But I said that if you thought that Saka should rest, you're an effing idiot. Which I 100% agree with. I stand 10 toes down on that one. It's the Champions League. It's the biggest competition in the world, and besides the Premier League, however you want to argue that, and it needs to be respected. And when you go to a place in Italy, which is notoriously one of the hardest countries to go play an away game in the Champions League, full stop. I don't care who you're playing. Um, a team that came off of the back of winning the Europa League, that's didn't just win the Europa League against young boys and team with a bunch of consonants that we can't pronounce. They won it against a Leverkusen team who had literally gone the league undefeated, right? So they're not bumps, and they had nothing. They had 1.4 xg, which is 8.8 of which was from the saved penalty. I mean, probably all of that is from the saved penalty and the saved header off of the penalty, right? So there was a couple of Cuadrado shots from outside the box. I think there was another shot that they had kind of outside of the 6-yard box that went way over. And other than that, we limited them to nothing. And I think these are the games where you limit them to nothing and you hope that you can get one chance on the break to put in. And I think Martinelli totally, he's in a bad way of form right now, right? So the two chances that fell at his feet were not going in. They were nowhere near going in. But away match in Italy on a midweek when you're playing against the team that you've lost to the league twice in a row, you will take a draw every time. And the performance defensively was super solid. I think you saw the players that we were missing. But I also thought it was, this team plays in a certain way that's very aggressive, high pace, high intensity, high pressing, and they were terrified of doing that because they knew that they were going to get picked off. So that's today's match. I think that can kind of put a bow on that, unless you guys have anything else to add on that one. I did want to shout out to Endrick, who, this kid, he's hilarious to me because he is totally out of fucks. Like, he must have left them in Brazil, because this guy, he ran down the whole field. Shout out to Vinny, who knew that he wasn't getting the ball and made the sacrifice run. Like, he saw Endrick carrying the ball. He's like, this man is going to shoot the ball. And he went from the inside all the way out to the outside. And Mbappe's like, I don't know why Mbappe thought that he was going to get the ball, but he wasn't getting the ball. Carried it all the way down the field, hits it, takes the deflection, and it goes in. I'm like, this guy just can't stop scoring. It's hilarious to me. Were there any other kind of moments like that for you, Nigel, of the matches that you saw?
I thought Villa were all right. I watched Villa. I thought Villa played all right. I thought they controlled the game, but they were playing against the young boys of Bern. I thought Munich were decent, but they were playing against Dinamo Zagreb, and Zagreb didn't really look very good. I mean, of the other games, you look at the other games, and I think this. If you look at it, Liverpool.
We lost you for a second. Can you say that again?
So I was saying, I think it's because of where it is, where this first game week sat, and reflection, where it is in with the international break and stuff. Because I thought Liverpool was a bit drab. I thought that was a drab game. Milan looked so far off it; it's unbelievable. Liverpool didn't even get out of second gear. Liverpool had a tougher game against Forest, and they had a tougher game the first game seen against Ipswich than what they did against AC Milan. The only team really who impressed me for the games what I saw, I thought Juventus looked great against PSV. I thought they looked good. I thought they controlled the game. I thought some of the attacking movement, you could see what Motta's trying to get him to do. He's getting to trying to do something a lot different than what Allegri was doing. But yeah, they look fluid. Juventus look fluid. And to be fair, I think they probably carry the biggest threat out of all the Italian teams. I know Inter got a 0-0 draw at City, but I mean, 0-0 draws at City, they come along quite regular, don't they? So If you look at, that's the other thing. If you look at City's record against big teams, I think they've only won one game in the last 9 or 10 against big teams. Well, I don't think it's a big team to beat Man United, but that's the other one what they've done.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The Dabo, how did you think? Let's look at the Premier League because that's typically the focus of our podcast anyway. What did you think of the Liverpool and or City performances?
Yeah, I think the Liverpool performance, they just went and did a job. I think, like Nigel said, I thought Milan were pretty lackluster. They didn't really offer much, to be honest. And even when Milan went 1-0 up, it was just kind of, they didn't really offer much after that. And Liverpool were comfortable, and I think they won that game without having to kind of go into fifth and sixth gear as well. So for them, it was a good European away performance. 3 points. It's still a tough place to go to San Siro, but I thought that Milan were as it was a good European away performance from Liverpool, but at the same time, I think it was also coinciding with the fact that Milan were just so poor. City and Inter was a really interesting game. I thought, because it's almost like what we might see on Sunday between City and Arsenal, being the big Premier League game, in terms of how Inter set up really, really defensively well. Their shape was very good for most of the game. And on the counter, they were good until the final action. And I think there's a lot of things that Arsenal can take from that moving into Sunday, and kind of try and utilise that. But yeah, I think for me, what stood out in the moments, normally City, when they get those chances late on, they knock at the door and they knock at the door and they eventually get one. Gundogan missed 2 ridiculously good chances from headers. One just completely straight at the keeper, and then I think one went just over the bar. And he's kind of a big moment player as well, Gundogan. So you expected them to hit the back of the net. But I think for 80 minutes, I think for the first 80 minutes, I think Inter were actually the better side for me, personally. I just didn't think that they were clinical on the counter-attack, and that final action was really, really missing. And then the last kind of 10, 15 minutes, City were really piling the pressure on, but they couldn't get the result. It just shows how tough these European ties are. That City couldn't beat Inter at home. We've got to go away to Inter, so that'll be a good tactical battle. But yeah, Premier League teams, 2 wins, 2 draws. I think that the quality of the Premier League is so high at the moment. I think that the results kind of replicate that. And I wouldn't be shocked to see all 4 Premier League teams go through, and Arsenal, Liverpool and City definitely knocking towards the top 8.
Yeah, one thing that I was actually saw this clip from Kieran McKenna, and an interviewer was asking, a reporter was asking him about the impact of the international break on his team and the fixture congestion and all that stuff. And he had a really interesting answer, which was basically about that burden being concentrated on the best teams and the best players, right? And like he's used to playing twice a week in the championship, but the players who are playing for their international teams are typically on the best teams, who are playing all full 90 minutes for their international teams, playing for their league teams, and then also playing the Champions League. Ben, how much did you think that the international break coming when it came, and then hopping right back into the league schedule, but all of that burden really being on a small group of players, how much did you think that impacted this specific week of fixtures?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it necessarily was just these fixtures, but I think just in general, like it's definitely having an effect on a lot of these games and how teams go and approach some of these games. You're seeing more teams be a bit more reserved, a bit more pragmatic, not trying to go all out, really high intensity, because there's such a long season and there's literally 2 more international breaks this year, I believe. I think there's one in October and one in November. So, you've got a situation there where every time a team is feeling like they're building a bit of momentum, then they're getting another break, and that can just take the sting out of any of that momentum. And for a lot of teams, that's how they go and win something, or how they massively move up the table. Like if you look at last season, both Arsenal and City went on a very long winning streak or unbeaten streak, and then obviously Arsenal lost to Villa. But if you look at from 2022, from the new year onwards, had a really good record, and City as well were just winning every game back to back like that. If you get international breaks like several in there, it can really slow that down a bit. And I don't know, I always felt like you should just put them all together at one time, and it also helps the international managers because they get to work with the players a bit longer in a more concentrated manner, rather than a week here, a week there, and 2 weeks there. Like it's not very helpful really for the standard of that football as well. It's just I don't like, but I think they're gonna have to do something. There's a lot of players speaking up about it, but at the same time, I do think it's been exaggerated a little bit. The games we've not suddenly, apart from the Champions League this season, a lot of the games are about the same length. The amount of games are about the same. You just noticing more teams not having massive squads, not rotating the players more. So I think that's probably after this season, if things don't change, which they won't. Some of these top teams might start bringing in more players and having a bigger squad.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Nigel, any last thoughts on the first week of the league phase of the Champions League?
Yeah, just I mean but I think it's been interesting to see how the fixtures and results, and it's weird looking at a league table with 36 teams in it. But then I think just a bit further on it, the fixtures are just ridiculous. How the fixtures have laid out. Someone had been saying earlier, so we had to play Spurs away, Atalanta away, and we go City away. But then we go Bolton at home, Leicester at home, PSG at home, Southampton at home, so 4 in a row at home. But then a bit further down the line, we do Newcastle away, Internazionale away, Chelsea away, before there's 2 more international breaks, but they're only for one weekend. So it's crazy again. And the international breaks are the 12th of October and is it about the 17th of November, maybe? Something like that. Or something like that. But yeah, so yeah, it's just bonkers. It's bonkers how the fixtures have come out. I think it's going to add a lot of pressure. I think Ben's right in terms of the squads, because I think it's going to add a lot of pressure with how these fixtures have turned out.
It's really interesting because you would think that and so like at the end of the competition, right, when you get into the quarters and semis, the other leagues adjust their league schedule to match with the Champions League, right? So the teams that are left have the best chance to move forward, and either those teams don't play on the weekend or the fixtures are adjusted. And it'll be interesting to see with this new format and as we move forward how leagues adapt to the new schedule and how leagues adapt their schedule and the way that they make the teams play in order to maximize or minimize how it impacts, right? Because if all of the Champions League teams played at home on the weeks after Champions League games, right, that would be a very different situation than having all those teams go away, right? And we know that it's made by a computer, right? So there's a way to change these specific things within that algorithm to make sure that the Champions League teams are playing at home after these match days, before the Champions League schedule even comes out. So it'll be interesting to see how the teams advocate for changes like that, small changes that, okay, we know that if we do have to play a Champions League game, then we know we're going to be home the next week. Ben?
Yeah, I was just going to say, the one other thing I would just thought when you were saying that was there's the stage after, like in between, that wasn't there before, where the middle group have to play, so like the top of that group play the bottom. And so it's also, where are those games going to come in? So it's not just the group part or the league part, now you'd call it, it's then that. So, and if what they might try to do is, I don't know the exact, I could have to check the dates, but when these games actually fall, but they might try to do it that the time that the group stage would be done. So normally by the new year, when the Champions League starts back in like February time, it's the knockout stages. And if they make it so that that's the case again, maybe it will be fine. It will just be the first half of the season, which is really busy. And then after that, some teams will start to have less and less games. That might be okay, but it does then mean the first half of the season is like jam-packed of games for a lot of those teams. So yeah, we just need bigger squads, I would say, because a lot of the if you look at Arsenal right now, we've been trying to work towards 2 players per position. Finally got it, and now it looks like it's not enough. Potentially, if you look at these games, and anyone, if they get a few injuries early on, they can be in not the best situation. So yeah.
Yeah, the last match day 7 is the 21st and 22nd of January. Match day 8 is the 29th of January. And then that round of 32 is going to be the mid February. So the 11th and 12th and 18th, 19th. And then the round of 16 will be the first 2 weeks of March.
That's mental, though. That is because as well, the problem that you get at that part of the season is then you've got a lot of fixture rearrangements because clubs start getting through in the cup competitions, in the European competitions. It's just an obscene amount of football. And I saw some people criticising what Rodri was saying the other day, and I think they're not getting the fact that he's not saying that it's not physically possible to play 60, 70 games, because it is. But A, it's not sustainable, and B, as fans, we want to watch these top players playing at the top level. And when you're asking these players to play that many games, they're not at the top physical level. They're not at the top mental level. And we're not seeing the quality of football that we should be seeing. And I think that it's actually going to get worse after the new year, especially if you're one of those teams that's going into the latter stages of, say, the FA Cup. And you're playing teams that have also in the FA Cup. So you've got fixture schedule rearrangements. If you're somehow making it into that kind of round of 32, almost it's not a round of 32, but it basically is a round of 32. If you're getting into that alone, you've already added 4 games compared to what you were doing last season. It's just an obscene amount of football. And I think that there will be a breaking point somewhere, but it just depends. Does something get done about it before something ridiculous happens in terms of player health and player fitness, or does something happen after some incident happens that causes change? So it's going to be one of those interesting ones, but I think it's just going to be poor for the whole season, and I think it will take until the end of the season for people to really realise the kind of knock-on effects that we've had.
Yeah, because like you said, Dabo, all it takes is one team to be in Europe or even in a domestic cup competition to make a bunch of fixtures be rescheduled, right? And particularly in the Premier League where there is no winter break, it's going to be different in Germany where they have their nice little winter holiday and they go sit on Ben White's lounge in Dubai. The Premier League teams are going to be eating it the worst, right? You're going to have these extra fixtures. And in the Premier League, you also have another domestic cup competition that you don't have in other countries, right? So it's going to be really interesting to see how the coaches adapt, how youth and the youth players come into these types of situations, and ultimately how the quality of football looks at the end of the day. But thanks for jumping on, guys. That wraps up our first Champions League game week of the league phase of the Champions League. Thanks for jumping on, boys, and we'll talk to you soon.